Cuba, it's me. Welcome to episode 221 of the W.I.L.L.I.W show, which stands for Wrestling is Life. Life is Wrestling. Now, today I wanted to talk about the very first time you were introduced to wrestling. The first time you saw it, what happened, what was your initial thoughts, what did you like about it, what did you not like about it, where were you, what did you see, anything you can remember from your first taste of the wild, wacky world of professional wrestling. Now, for me, back in 1986, I was 4 years old, and where I grew up in Campbell River, BC, I wasn't in the main city. We were out of town a ways, and we could not get cable out there. We just had the antenna, and we would get CBC, CTV, and Check 6 Nanaimo station. Now, sometimes on lazy Saturday, I was a really active kid, but sometimes I would flip through the three channels and see what there was to watch, and sometimes I would watch some pretty crappy shows just because they were on. Like, I would watch that show of the dog, I think it was like Littlest Hobo or something, and I would watch Coronation Street, just some horrible shows that, looking back now, I was like, man, I must have been really bored, but beggars can't be choosers, right? And so this one Saturday afternoon on the CTV channel, there was a hour program called Wrestling Challenge, and they didn't even show very many good matches. Most of them would be jobber matches. Then they'd usually have an interview or two, and then the main event would be like two mid-carders battling, or sometimes they would have something more exciting. So I happened to be flipping through, and the wrestling was on, and it was just fate, I guess. The first wrestler I saw was Jake the Snake Roberts, and he was wrestling some jobber. He came down to the ring, and he did a couple of things. He took a couple of punches. I don't think he bumped the entire match. Then he did his knee lift. He did his short arm clothesline. He did the DDT. Now, all that had me, I was pretty impressed by it. I was always into sports as a kid. But then he pointed to the corner, and then he went and got this bag, and I was like, what the heck is he doing? What is in the bag? Took the bag out. I'm sure all of you know. There was a snake in the bag, and he put it on the lifeless body of his opponent. And then he picked the snake up and raised it up, and everyone went crazy, and my mind exploded. It was just too much to handle all at once. Okay, they were fighting, there's a snake involved. What have I gotten myself into? So I was blown away. And then, so my mom took me down to the video store a couple of days later. It was called Video Scene in Campbellton area. And it used to be on the other side of the street, the side that Mohawk store was on. Eventually it moved across the street, but it was always still the Video Scene. And so I had my mind made up that I was going to find a wrestling video. The first wrestling video I rented, it was some Coliseum video, and I can't even remember the name of it. I'm not sure, but I'd seen that Jake the Snake was in one of the matches. He was facing Kamala, so I got that tape. And I was instantly hooked, and I couldn't stop blabbing on to my parents about it. Blah, 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 wrestling this, Jake the Snake that. So my mom, she took, my dad found it actually, I believe. It was like a plastic pipe, a black pipe about this big and long enough, and they cut it to make it big enough for a snake. They put a sock on, I believe my mom put the sock on the front of it and put some buttons on the eyes to make it look like a snake. And it just so happened they had a green bag very similar to Jake the Snake's bag. So I put that in the bag, and then I'd have a mattress on the floor, and I would DDT the pillows, which is pretty much the only move I knew, maybe a couple punches. Then I would take my snake out and put it on the guy after I pinned him. So that was the first time I was introduced to wrestling, and I was hooked from the get-go. Head over heels, sunk. It was meant to be. Wrestling is life, life is wrestling. But I'd really like to hear some other people's stories. What was the first time? Do you remember exactly? Did you like it? Maybe you didn't even like it. Maybe you said, oh, that stuff's crappy, and maybe it grew on to you at a later time. Like, Were you watching it on TV? Did you get taken to a live event? Did you rent a video? Were you at your friend's house? I'd love to hear it, because as always, on The W.I.L.L.I.W Show, like or you get a leg drop, comment or you get a clothesline, subscribe or you get a suplex. I'm your host, Elian Habanero. I love wrestling. Cuba!